So welcome to the veg garden in the middle of May, and I'm really excited to show you some of the progress that I've made since the last video, which I made towards the middle of April. It's that time of year now where things are really starting to move, and as many of you know, I'm in the process of transforming my garden into a vegetable plot. So some of the things are progressing really well, but I'm also going to show you one or two things that have not progressed as well as I expected, and show you that I've still got plenty of work to do. So I'm going to take you on a tour of different parts of my garden, show you some of the plants and seedlings that I'm growing in my mini greenhouse, take you into the potting shed, and also show you some of the progress I'm making with the vegetables I'm growing in pots. So let's get started. Now I'm going to start with the two areas at the bottom of my garden that I'm transforming into vegetable growing areas. You can see this one just at the end of the lawn where I've got my compost bin just on the right hand side, and I've got a few raised beds in place now, and I'll show you the vegetables I've got in there. Just recently cut the grass because we did have a break in the rain a few days ago and I managed to get the grass cut. We have had a particularly wet couple of weeks here. After having a really dry January to April, it's been particularly wet, which is not such a bad thing, but it does hamper progress sometimes when you need to get things done. So here you can see I have 4 raised beds. All of them are no dig, and there is a video on my channel showing you how I installed the no dig beds. This one here on the left hand side I've already got planted up. Now on the left hand side at the front you can see rocket, and then just to the right hand side there's 2 varieties of lettuce, one called Lola Rossa and the other is Little Gem. They're growing really nicely, and behind them I've got some onions. The onions are a little bit slow, but they still look quite healthy, and like most vegetables I'm absolutely sure they'll catch up. I will be making a second sowing of lettuce over the next week, so that once these are harvested I'll have something to put in their place. Now these 2 beds here have got netting on them, and that would indicate that there's something in there. So if I go to the back bed over here first, about 10 days ago I planted spring onions in the back, and they haven't quite germinated yet. They're the ones with the 3 labels there, 3 rows. And at the front here we have 3 rows of beetroot, and they are just starting to germinate, which is really good. I really like beetroot, and there's 2 varieties that I've planted here, one called Monetta, which I grew last year, another called Boltardi. And last weekend in the bed just in front here I planted my Ferrari dwarf French beans and a couple of rows of Autumn King carrots. They won't germinate just yet. I'm expecting to see some sign of life within the next 10 to 14 days. This bed has nothing in it just yet, but as you'll see when I show you what's in the mini greenhouse, I have got stuff now ready to plant in there. Now as you can see, I've netted all 3 beds that I've already planted, and that's really important you do that as soon as possible. I've used a very simple technique of using garden canes with water bottles, and then I've used this bird netting, which you can see here, and that provide a really good level of protection because birds particularly do like young seedlings. Now if we move over to the other part of the garden, you'll see that this hasn't progressed hardly at all, although there is some progress. You'll notice over here where the colour of the fence changes, there used to be a tree in there, a dead tree, which I've now taken out. And I haven't dug the ground or cleared the ground just yet, but it's given me a little bit more space there. And all of these, mainly weeds, will need to be dug out. You can see some nettles at the back. These 2 conifers will have to go, and all this area will be cleared over here. Now that would appear to be quite a lot of work, but this area was dug last year and I had flowers in here, so I know that these weeds will just pull out by hand, most of them. So even though it looks a little bit unsightly, it won't take me too long to tidy that up. And I do need to get on with that because, as you'll see in a moment, I've got vegetables ready to plant in these areas, and at the moment I haven't got the space for them. So that's not progressed as well as I'd want, and that's partly down to the weather. My plan was last weekend to clear this completely, but it absolutely poured down last weekend to a point where I did get that tree out over on this side over here, but I was absolutely soaked. Hopefully the weather will be better this weekend and I'll be able to get this area cleared, and next time I take you on a tour this will be dug and have some vegetables in it. Now it's really exciting. If we go to the back of my garden just over here, you'll notice that my potatoes have grown really well. If you look at the April tour that I did, which was only 4 weeks ago, there was no growth at all in these. The buckets were almost like the ones at the front here. But those 9 buckets over here are a variety of second early potatoes called Charlottes. And they've really had a growth spurt, and I suspect that might be because of the amount of rain that we've had. Now that I can see that they're growing so well, what I'm going to have to do is make more space between these pots. So I'll move these pots to give them more air circulation around them. Now the pots on this side over here that don't appear to have much growth were planted 3 weeks later than the Charlottes, and these are a main crop of potatoes called Picasso. But excitingly, these have also started to appear. You can see where the compost is starting to break here and here. There's more growth just coming over here. So you can see the cracks in the compost. It's where the potatoes are starting to push through. We've got one over here. I suspect when we do the June tour that the Picasso potatoes are going to very much like the Charlottes. So I'm exceptionally pleased with the way these are progressing. These are grown in 30-litre pots, and there's a video on my channel showing you how I planted these with a combination of my own homemade compost and some new compost, and I'll put a link to that video in the video comments below. Now, because I have much less space to grow vegetables in my garden compared to my previous allotments, I've had to make really good use of pots. Now, you've seen the potatoes that we've just looked at, and they're growing really well. I'm also growing tomatoes and peppers in pots, and you can see these just here, just at the side of my house. Just on the left-hand side, you can see 5 tomato plants, and in between them, there are pepper plants. So the tomatoes on this side are Marmande, which are a bush variety of outdoor tomatoes, and the peppers are a combination of DKN and jalapenos. And I'm hoping that the temperature is going to start to increase and give them a bit of growth spurt, but they still look healthy, so I'm quite happy with that. Over on the far side here, I've got more tomatoes. Now this variety along this wall here are a variety called red cherry, and again there's more peppers interspersed with those. But I'm really pleased with the tomatoes. They're growing ever so well. I have had to move them indoors and outdoors previously due to the cold temperatures and sometimes the heavy winds. But over the last 3 weeks, they've been out here permanently and they've grown really well. What I'm really happy about is if you notice that they're starting to get their first flower trusses on them. And that tells me that's the time to start feeding them, which I will do over the next few days. You'll also notice I've got my water bottles in the pots at the base of the tomatoes, and they're a really good way of providing water directly to the roots of the tomatoes. There's a video on my channel showing you how to do this and the benefits of using this method, and I'll also put a link to that in the video comments below. And then we come over to my mini greenhouse here. I have got another one of these to put up because I'm going to need more space. Just at the top of here I've got more pepper plants, so there's DKN, jalapeno, and the sweet peppers there called California Wonder just on the right hand side, all grown really well and really healthy, so really happy with them. Underneath I have some fuchsias, and these are fuchsias that I took cuttings from myself, and they have got a good root system on them as well because I checked those a few days ago, so they're developing really nicely. If you want to know how to take fuchsia cuttings, there is another video on my channel showing you how I did this, and you'll be surprised at how simple it actually is. I'll also put a link to that in the video description below. So over here I've transplanted my calendula, so these are flowers. They'll be ready to go out in the garden in around about 3 weeks time, I'd imagine, and they're growing really well. And this is always something I really love growing. Just here are celery. This is a variety called Octavius F1, and I've got a lot of celery here, more than I'm going to need. But I'm terrible for not throwing things away. So when I was pricking these out, I could have easily discarded half of these, but I just can't do it. So I put them in cell trays and they'll grow, and I'll just gift them to people. And at the back here we have another sowing of lettuce. So they will go into the raised beds very soon actually. They look like they're almost ready to go in. And underneath here I have 6 kale plants which I grew from seed. These are a variety called Dwarf Green Curled, and one that I grow every year. So they will go in that area that I was just describing that needs to be dug on the right hand side at the bottom of my garden. So I need to get cracking with that. I've also brought these outside. These are my cucumbers. These have been indoors, and these are going to go back indoors because I'm not confident that they're okay to stay outside just yet. Cucumbers, out of all vegetables, in my opinion, are the most temperamental. They don't really like adapting to temperature and changes in soil conditions, etc. So I'm always very cautious with cucumbers. So I'll take these back indoors for another week or so. Then, if the temperature's okay, I'll look to plant them outside. But these are growing exceptionally well. I'm really pleased with those. There's 5 plants here. That's going to produce enormous amounts of cucumbers. This is an outdoor variety of cucumbers called Market More 76. It's one that I've grown for years. I definitely think that's worth trying if you've never tried Market More before. When I do plant these outside, I'm going to have to make sure that I've got a good level of organic compost, give them a good watering, and provide a high level of support for them as well. But you will have to keep an eye on cucumbers because they are very water dependent and you don't want them to dry out. They can't last in these pots too much longer anyway because the capacity of the soil won't be able to accommodate the growth in the roots, so therefore they're going to have to be transplanted anyway. That's what I'm growing in my mini greenhouse and indoors with the cucumbers. So I'm just going to take you into the potting shed and show you one or two other things that I'm growing there. I do start one or two plants and seeds indoors in my potting shed, but this isn't an ideal location, to be honest, because there's not an awful lot of light in here. All I've got is this one window at the front. So let me just come in and shut the door because it's raining again. Let me just show you what I have here. At the front here, I've got two trays of flowers which are growing, and these will be moved into the second mini greenhouse when I've built it. On the left hand side here, these are a wonderful flower called Mesbethymbrianthium. I hope I've said that correctly. Grew these last year. They're almost like little tiny dahlias that open and close. Just at the back here I have some Elysium, and these will need to be pricked out and thinned out within the next week or so. And at the front, which are always slow going, are Coleus. And in the other tray I've got a variety of flowers. I've got petunias in the bottom left hand corner, convoluvius here which will need to be pricked out. I only planted a few of these seeds in this tray just as a trial really, so even though it appears that there's poor germination, there was very few seeds put in there, whereas the Mesbethymbrianthium and the Elysium, ones that I've grown before, I'm pretty confident I'm going to get a good amount of those. In the propagator, if I lift the lid up, I've got rosemary which I've taken from cuttings in the back, and they're growing really well also, and sage also taken from cuttings, nice and healthy. In the back I have thyme, and then I have some basil at the front. So that's what I've got growing in my potting shed. A bit of pricking out and thinning out to do with the flowers, and these will be moved into the second mini greenhouse which is over here, which I just need to put together. Because outside the plants will get much more light, and this is a much better environment for them in this compared to over here where they've got this single window. And finally I'll show you the top of my garden, which is my patio where we grow flowers. And my wife loves flowers, and I've already got a good display here, even though we're only really at the beginning of May. Lots of pansies, other colourful flowers. This is a rhododendron over here, which you can see that's ready to bloom. And over here we have a clematis, which my wife recently bought, a beautiful colour. I'll be taking cuttings off this as well to grow more plants. The fuchsia, which is here, is where I took the cuttings from that I've just shown you in the potting shed. You can see the beautiful colour of the pansies, the purples, the oranges, the yellows. Oh, and here we have some sunflowers. These are mini sunflowers, which my two grandsons, Jacob and Tommy, planted for their Nanny Tina for Mother's Day. So there's some there and there's some over here, and they're growing really well. So we're really excited about seeing how they get on. And over here we have some thyme, some rosemary, and some sage, and these are the plants that I took the cuttings from. So these plants cost me £3 each. But as you saw, I've got 12 cuttings of each in the potting shed, so it's good value for money if you can make more plants like that. So that's our current flower display for the beginning of May. So as you can see, I've made plenty of progress, but as always in the vegetable garden, there's always plenty to do. I particularly need to clear the other area of my garden because now I'm getting to a place where I have seedlings that I need to put in those areas, so I really need to get a move on in the next month. But I do hope you've enjoyed the tour, and I'd love to know how you're progressing, so let me know what you're growing in your vegetable garden in the comments below. And if you're doing things in different ways or maybe growing different things, then it'd be great if you could share that information in the comments below, because it's always good to share this information with other growers. It's really helpful. I really hope you've enjoyed the tour, and I will do another tour in around about 4 weeks in the middle of June, and hopefully show you that I've made further progress in my vegetable garden. If you did like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and if you want to subscribe to the channel for future videos on how to sow and grow fruit and veg and flowers and 1 or 2 recipe ideas, don't forget to press the subscribe button. And I'll see you all on the next video.